Welcome, everyone. This is Terry Conley, and it's July, and we are going to do fireside chats with wisdom keepers, crones, and elders. And this month's chat is about listening. And who I have with me today is Kimberly Keating Wohlford. Welcome, Kimberly. Good to see you. And so I'm going to start with asking a quick question. Kimberly, why did you choose July and listening as when you wanted to chat with me? What prompted you?
Well, it's interesting because when you originally put up your calendar of what you wanted, it's funny because I thought I signed up for Do It Anyway. But then when I'm looking through and I'm like picking the date, July 18th seemed like the date that I should be doing this, okay? And so then I realized, oh, well, the topic is listening. And I said, well, I'm not even going to say anything to Terry because I'm going to do it anyway because I felt like do it anyway. I just said that naturally. That was not planned. Because I thought, well, I really do need to probably listen to what I'm being called to do and to really talk about listening. So it was a lesson in itself.
Excellent. And it's what's funny is how often those types of little things happen to us. And if we don't take the time to listen, right, even if it's not someone jawing in your ear, we miss out on a lot of the experiences or wisdom that can be given to us if we just pause for a minute and don't get flustered because, well, I thought it was this and yeah, we did this and I wanted this, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I guess it's this.
Exactly.
And then, you end up finding out why, because you listened. Are there other times, Kimberly, when I don't know, for me, oftentimes when it comes to listening, at early on, I used to think I had to get really quiet in order to hear. And I didn't always have those times, those moments, right? You're in the middle of the office or you're in the middle of doing something with friends or family. And it's like, I need to be listening here. And you can't pause because everybody looks at you like, hey, what are you doing? Get over here. We need you. Right? Did you find that too when you first really kind of said, okay, I'm going to start listening to my soul, to spirit, to the universe? Did you find that too when you started out?
Absolutely. I mean, within like the chaos of life, whether it be work or family, there's so many voices coming in at you at one time usually that it's often difficult to kind of pick where to listen and where to focus. So it can be really difficult. And then sometimes you might just like gravitate to the voice that's calling you that you really want to engage with.
Right.
You don't always have that choice. I was actually very fortunate in parts of my life and career that I had a job where I traveled and was in my car a lot. And that would be like my time to kind of sift through the noise and really think and listen. But otherwise, I mean, it was very, very difficult. And it actually, by not having, being so distracted with so many voices, sometimes it wasn't very healthy,
Yes.
And you had to like take control and really, really, I don't know, hone yourself and your listening skills. Yeah.
Yes. That's an excellent point. It's like, yes, learning how to sift out what needed to be sifted out. What is your own self-doubt, right? What's that tape that runs in your head all the time? Learning how to sift that out so you can hear the higher guidance. I mean, I know for sure that if there were times that I wasn't listening and it was really, really important from spirit, my soul needed me to really pay attention to something, I would seriously get knocked upside the head. And that's a phrase, but it would be loud enough that it was like, we need you to pay attention. And I think, I don't know, it seemed like paying attention was the underlying message for listening?
I totally hear what you're saying, because I think in the days when I had the most stressful job, there were days I'd wake up in the morning and it would just be like spirit saying, just stay in bed, do not go to work today. We have things we need to talk to you about, or you just need to be still, and, it'd be like, oh, okay, I'm calling off today. And that's when, like, either a problem maybe that I was wrestling with at
Yes.
work or even personally, I would have that time to really kind of, all of a sudden it would open up and some of the answers would start to come in, or at least there'd be some sense of peace in readdressing it.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think that's the I don't know, the motivator for listening is that you do get answers. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you do get a sense of calmness and clarity. Even if, like what you said, even if you don't get the answer to the specific problem, you do have a sense of, okay, this is going to get handled.
Right.
It's coming. And when we rush around, we can't always hear, because listening, I mean, even though I talked about I could get knocked up the side of the head because I wasn't listening,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the answers and information is very subtle.
It is. And sometimes you get little signs and our humanness ignores them. Oh, no, 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 it's not that, and spirit's trying to tell you, pay attention here. And you're going, oh, but I like this too much. I don't want to change it. And then something happens and you do get that big, like, wait a minute.
Yes.
And then looking back, you go, why didn't I listen sooner?
Oh
And
no.
my ego is fighting with my spirit, and yeah, I think as we walk the path of life, we get better at hearing and listening to that. Don't you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, I think so too.
It's a
I mean,
skill.
it's, yeah, it's a skill, like you said earlier. We have to learn how to hone it,
Yes,
right?
we do.
So, speaking of hone it, were there anything in particular that you found incredibly useful as far as helping you to listen better? Um,
Um, Hmm.
because that's
Yes, I
kind of,
think one thing is to be open and not have expectations. You're really, you're not defining what you want too clearly. Like, you have to be careful how you ask for guidance.
yes,
Um, One of the things that I like to kind of equate listening to in terms of honing it so that you really are in tune, like, you have an ear for listening. I liken it to learning how to play an instrument. So when you first are young and you take up an instrument, you
uh-huh.
learn all the tools, right? You learn, the notes and the tempo and everything that's written down. And so when we're listening, the tools are like the words, the language, whatever. And so, but to really be good at playing an instrument, you have to get to the point that you're so connected to the basics that you can play by ear, that you are connected spiritually to that instrument. So our ears are kind of like that we have to, like, keep practicing. And the only way to get better at it is to keep practicing and practicing. And you're going to make a lot of mistakes and you're going to go back to the beginning, but you just got to keep practicing. And before you know it, you have something beautiful that you're in tune with and you're walking with that song.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And as you were talking, I was thinking times of when I would sit and ask a question, right, and listen in the moments when I could actually sit still and listen for an answer. And oftentimes it would be not necessarily the answer I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and so then I'd ask again, and I would find over time that it was always the same answer. So I wasn't going to be able to manipulate spirit into giving me the answer I wanted. It had to be this answer. And looking back, realizing that if I had taken that answer the first time I got it, I would have saved a lot of time, because I could have moved on to the next question instead of hanging on to that first expectation of a certain answer. So it's really kind of funny. I mean, now that we talk about it, I'm looking back and thinking on some of these places where listening just, it wasn't like you said with musical instrument, it's practicing and practicing, but it's practicing to be open to what you're hearing.
Right.
Don't you think sometimes?
Well, yeah, and that's kind of what I mean by playing by ear. So if you practice an instrument, you play by ear, you're just open sometimes to how the spirit is leading you to play, and you're hearing it. But yeah, being open is so key, really, because, you know, the answer that you may get that you don't like actually it may be the one that's really going to take you in the direction you need to go, that you didn't realize you need to go there. When you get there, you look back and go, oh, now I get it.
Yeah. So let's stay on that, right? Because it is practice. And you said like a musical instrument. What other things could we kind of compare it to hone that ability, right? To perfect your ear. Because, you know, the musical instrument is such a really good one, but if somebody's not played something, even singing, right? If you're singing.
Yes, singing. Yes. Well, I think too, one of the great ways to really hone your listening skills is in basic conversations with other people too. You know, one of the things that I learned over the years being in a job or sales is listening is not about you talking. Listening is about you listening, right? And I find that when really engaging with someone, to show that you're listening, you respond with a question that repeats what they just said. So you're affirming that, okay, now I understand this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I can build on this and go to the next question. And so I started using that internal dialogues, right? That, okay, so this is what I'm hearing, and you kind of affirm it and restate it. Okay, but how do I build on this?
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes that's something I think I learned over time, that it's not about, okay, I'm listening, but I'm already thinking about what I'm going to say next. No, you're listening, but you're really in tune with that individual, or in case, you know, in the case we're talking about spirit, you're in tune with that to really listen and have a dialogue.
Yeah. And that's a really great point, Kimberly, because I think especially when it comes with spirit, we ask a question or we're seeking guidance, and spirit comes back with an answer. And if we give that answer back in a question, it helps us in many ways to get it deeper into us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've now spoken it, we can hear it again for the second time. And then it offers the opportunity for spirit to add a little more, or maybe clarify it, take it a little bit deeper, because spirit then knows we're listening.
Exactly. Yes.
It's like, okay. So,
Well, even a simple question like, well, what do you mean by that? Whatever it is. Or, you know, you're just asking for clarification, and that can really help you on your path.
yes, exactly. It really, really can. It's important. So we've kind of gone over quite a few of these little pieces, but what else? I'm standing here thinking, what else about listening is vital, because it is really probably one of the basic tenets that we need to develop as we're building our connection to our souls and to spirit. What other, I think it opens, I guess what I'm asking is, to me, it seems like when I got better at listening, it opened the larger world to me. And by that I mean, it opened the animals and the land and other people to me, because I was now hearing them, listening to them, actually hearing them, rather than just wandering around with all the white noise that goes on in life. Did you find what were some of the pluses that you found as you honed your listening?
Well, I will say that being on the land and listening and really learning to find that place of silence, um, and asking questions even, right? That there's so much wisdom there. I found that it was easier to really listen to where I needed to stop and pay attention, that there might be a message for me somewhere. Whereas if I were just like, da 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 da, walking around, da da da, just keep moving, staying in that rhythm of constant movement, that to be slow and intentional and open to listen. And I think listening isn't just with your ears, it's with your eyes. You can hear with your eyes, because there's so many things that come to you that you see that then translate to something you hear. And I would always I have found, not always, but when I'm even just present with nature, then something happens or someone comes in your path, and then there's a conversation that illuminates you and illuminates your life, and just these chance happenings, because you're just open to where the path's going to take you and you're not trying to direct it.
Yes.
But you're listening for that direction.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I really liked the piece where you talked about it opens up the world, in the sense of, you were talking about, it's the honing, but it's that how spirit, it's also you said spirit also speaks in through your eyes, right? Through the sight. Right? And because spirit is very much the language of symbology, right? Being able to listen to that symbology that you're seeing through here is still an aspect of listening. Because spirit does not speak French or English. I mean, it does, because that's the language we speak, but spirit's language is symbolism. And listening, I love that, Kimberly, the fact that you brought in that listening is also through sight.
It's a sensory experience. I think that's how we can listen compassionately. Compassionate listening is how we really connect with our heart and our soul.
Yes.
Because our senses are open in more than just one way.
Right.
I mean, and even just the sense of feeling, of touch, whether, there's some breeze or something that just brushes your skin, is a message in itself at times, right?
Right. And so I'm loving how this is, because it's like when we talk about listening, we always go to our ears, right? We always go to hearing. But listening is also the touch, the symbolisms, all sensory aspects of being a human being. It's important to engage all of them and allow them to be available to you as you're listening to spirit, because spirit is not, spirit is subtle. At the same time, it can be very loud, but spirit is not the traditional way as humans that we think communication takes place. And I think sometimes that's where we struggle sometimes, is learning how to use our human senses to listen to spirit. And I love the fact you brought all this up, because it's true.
Well, and it can be quite profound, the subtlety of the message, right?
Yes.
If you are engaging all the senses, then you are actually breathing that message in, and it's becoming part of you. Yes. In the wholeness of the human body and spirit, that connection at that heart center. And so then, if you sit with it, then you go, wow, never thought of that. That's pretty amazing, And then it kind of becomes part of you. And it's great. Yeah. It's beautiful.
It is. It's really, really beautiful. And it's like, taking, and when people talk about stepping outside the box, Um, I think sometimes we forget that there's beauty within that box if we adapt to new skills, which is what we were just talking about. You can still be wandering around in your office place, or in your home with your family. But when you're listening with all of the sensory abilities of the body that the body has come in with that are gifts, because that's how the body connects to spirit, then you have these profound moments even when you're changing a diaper.
Yeah, that could happen. I've changed a few diapers lately with the new
Yes, you have, and congratulations. So it's like, yeah. Or I mean, you're changing a tire and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's what they meant, right?
Yeah, the simple little actions. It
Mm-hmm.
is amazing.
Yeah.
Really.
We don't have to go to the mountaintop to be able to
No, you
listen
don't.
and communicate with spirit. So it's fun. So what other things about listening? I mean, we've kind of covered several of them. And I think I asked you early on when we were first chatting, what you thought, and maybe we kind of semi covered it already, but what would you think are the levels of listening?
I think there's like, you can kind of break it down. There's like 3 levels and then there's sub levels kind of, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's active listening, and the active listening is, the conversational, both external, internal dialogues with others and ourselves, and also an active listening is that compassionate listening where you're really attentive with another or even yourself. Then there's that passive listening. I think that's what we were just talking about from that experience of just being. I think sometimes passive listening also involves informational. You're listening to either a speech, or you're listening to a podcast for information, and there's ways to listen to that are helpful and not helpful, right? There's ways to really listen to what resonates with your soul and you pull that in, versus trying to get every little piece of information that may not be part of your need, like taking notes ad nauseum. And then there's the spiritual. That's the passive as well. Very, that you're just meditating. You have your morning meditation and you're just there and you're passive and you're listening. I think that's really important. That's what we often really think about first, very often when we're connecting with spirit, is to be meditating.
Mm-hmm.
But we talked about the sensory, and I think that's almost like a separate level in itself, right?
Yeah.
I will say though that one way, kind of tying back to moving and be doing things and getting messages and listening, right? I think that is something that's very misunderstood sometimes, that you don't always have to be like sitting quietly and meditating, that you can be doing walking meditations. You can be doing the laundry, you can be cooking dinner, doing the dishes, and you can be in that space where, if it's an action that you're normally doing, you don't have to worry about safety issues, that you could hurt yourself.
Yeah, don't be chopping
That
carrots.
exactly, that in itself, that's a different level of listening that I think can be really a great way to utilize your time and have that time with spirit.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that to me, that's always how I say we don't have to go to the mountain, right? Spirit comes to us.
Exactly.
Spirit is within our lives, and it's us fine tuning and opening up to these skills. I mean, last month we talked about intuition. This month we're talking about listening. But all of those, learning to hone those skills opens up your daily life. Spirit then becomes a daily practice. It's not, like you said, you don't have to meditate. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been vacuuming
Mhm.
and it's like, oh, that's what you meant, right? I'm getting that insight. And I always say it's because I got myself out of my own way, because vacuuming is just kind of basically, um,
Yeah, it's a repetitive routine.
Right. It's like doing the dishes, right? Hang up the clothes, all of those things. And I think as children, we really used to do that. I mean, that's when we would get our little inspiration as children, when we were making the bed, because it was so mundane.
Oh
And then,
gosh, my sister and I used to use the vacuum cleaner, the upright, as a microphone, and we'd sing songs into it just to distract from having to clean.
I know exactly. And then we grow up and we forget to how much fun it is to
Play.
distract and play. Exactly. Just listen. And on one little note, just to share, when when I was young, and it hasn't stopped, I still do it. I talk to myself, right? I've always talked to myself. Um, and fortunately for me, my family didn't, they would just, that's Terry, I was never punished or told not to do it. Um, but now looking back on it, I know that when I was a little child talking, I wasn't talking to myself. I was
Mm-hmm.
having conversations with my soul and with spirit. And so now you could come to my home at the spur of the moment, and I would be wandering through my house doing my jobs, chatting,
Mm-hmm.
because that's how I do it. So in the sensory, for people who are chatty Cathys like me, you can still listen and be chatty,
Mm-hmm.
if you're honing it to where you're actually listening and you're not just babbling. Um, do you have any little secret type of thing that you can remember as a child you used to do to listen to spirit that you're finding using it now?
Well, it's an interesting little story. Knowing me, you won't find it too surprising. When I was little, I mean, I was the oldest, okay? And I always was like off in the yard playing and doing stuff and talking and I had a little, like many children have imaginary friends. I had a friend that I talked to all the time. And that was my friend, to the point that my parents actually acknowledged it and would set a place at the table, and I'm quite sure that this was a very real entity, you know, as I've grown and met other real entities. um,
Right.
and it's just, and I think acknowledging that part that, our higher self is connected to other realms,
Yes.
that we can have those conversations. I mean, I don't know if I would say that's a little trick, but it's a really fond memory,
Well, yeah.
of talking
Yeah.
out loud. Yeah. And feeling that I was being heard, believing it. And I believe that I was being heard. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. I did. I had a little playmate. I even named my last dog after my childhood playmate. Um, because, like you, I knew I was being heard.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew they were listening to me, and I knew they knew I was listening to them.
Yes.
And it really is. I mean, oftentimes it's like, go back to your childhood. That's when you were still connected. Um,
Absolutely.
bring that joy up and learn to listen. So, any last thoughts as we're winding down here, Kimberly, on listening that you might want to share that you think maybe we should be adding to this little chat here?
Well, the only thing that came up for me, we've talked about everyday experiences and how to incorporate listening in that way. That I will have to say that there is a benefit, when you say go on a retreat and you want to really go deeper, deeper, deeper into something, and you're with a group and you're doing some really serious guided meditations. And I've done some that are very, very, very deep. They can be extremely profound. But I will have to say, this is like going back to practicing the instrument. You have to be incorporating that in your daily life on a regular basis. So if you are wanting to go very deeper and really go to a spiritual retreat and expand that experience, you need to be practicing, because if you do, profound experience you will have of that expansion is indescribable.
Yeah.
What you learn, what you hear, what you are open to learning about yourself is really important.
Mm-hmm. Very well said, Kimberly. Very well said.
Yeah.
Very true. All of it. It's not just everything listening. It's daily, right? Any work with spirit it's daily. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to stop what you're doing to do it, but you do have to be practicing. You have to do the work. You otherwise, you're not going to be having the profound moments and the movement forward that you're really wanting if you don't practice.
Well, it's a relationship. It's a matter of an open door relationship versus having to come knock on the door and introduce yourself over and over, right?
Right, exactly. That's very well said. It's like, yeah, it's a relationship rather than constantly going to the door. Hi, it's me. Remember me? It's been about 5 years,
Exactly.
So it's like, right. So it is true. It is really well said because it is a relationship. It's not just a once a week thing. It truly is a relationship. And as much time and effort you put into your other relationships, it's important you put that time and effort into your relationship with your soul and with spirit.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I really want to thank you. I've enjoyed our chat. I do wish we could go on longer, but attention spans are only as they are. So I will honor those. And for everyone that's here watching, this is Kimberly Keating Wohlford, and her information will be in the description just down below. So if you want to reach out to her, feel free, right, Kimberly?
Yes, thank you. And thank you again, Terry, for inviting me to chat with you.
Oh, I loved it. Hopefully I'll see you on another month.
I would look forward to that as well.
Okay, excellent. Everyone, thank you for joining us. And as always, subscribe so that you'll know when we post these. Bye-bye for now. Love ya.
Bye.